When you start living with the end in mind, everything starts to change. What are people going to say about you? What message is your life going to speak when you're long gone? Because you weren't born by accident. You didn't just happen to be where you're at and happen to watch this video. There is always a reason. Welcome to the Fuse Life Podcast, episode 134. We're all about God-given assignments, purpose, destiny. And my guest today is living out her assignment, her expression.
Yes.
The thing that really caught my eye when I saw Bethany's newsfeed was actually the vulnerability, the transparency, and the message that was saying it's okay to not be okay, and you can get up and go again, you know?
Yes.
And I was like, wow, like I love this. And then obviously the creativity. And then we find out that Bethany's a leadership expert, storyteller, which you can see through her reels. She's a speaker. She's been in the corporate sector. And she loves coffee and she loves her kids, which is awesome. So Bethany, I just want to thank you for hanging out with us this morning.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So am I. I mean, you just seem like this real firecracker.
I am. These are facts. This is, if my parents, and I'm the oldest of 5, so if my 4 siblings were here, they would say, yeah. Yes and yes. Firecracker. For sure.
Boom. All right. Well, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you do currently, where you are, and what you spend your time on?
So currently, I do a couple of different things. I am a writer. I write on Instagram, and it's more motivational, encouragement, sometimes hitting you with a 1-2 punch, but also other times writing about the things that we think about before we go to bed at night. There's things that we wrestle with that maybe don't hit the trending topics. Then I'm a speaker. So I travel around and speak. I don't say yes to every request because when I pour out, I want to edify.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily doing it for the paycheck, but to heal and show people that you can get up again and again and again. And I use my story to do that because I have a unique story. It's a little different. And then I have a business called Periscope. And what I do there, the tagline is helping leaders see around corners. Nice. And so I take my experience from the corporate world and I will meet with small business owners, people who are trying to lead well in their everyday life, and consult with them on how to do that. Even if it's a business with several people, helping them scale their plan and what that looks like as it relates to their people and their business plan. So I do a couple of different things right now.
So good. And you're a writer. Okay, that makes a lot of sense in the sense of your posts on Instagram. You can really see that you're gifted there, to communicate something. Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you very much.
So I also saw that there was something about Jesus-led Bible fed. Your tag.
Yeah, so I have 2 Instagram accounts. So I have one account that's writing, which is under my name, Bethny Ricks. And then I have another account that's Jesus-led Bible fed that is helping people achieve their well done. I haven't posted there in a little while because I am working on some different projects and it's a little hard to juggle two platforms at once. And when I speak to edify. So I'm not just getting on that platform to just post. When I speak, I want to speak truth and life. And I just give people different pointers by looking at the life of Christ to help them show up well in their life. And
love it.
That can be defined in a lot of different ways. I'm not, too prescriptive on that.
Yeah, I love it. And I love Jesus-led, Bible-fed. I love it.
Hey, that's if you're going to lead well.
Yeah. And boom. And you got 2 kids?
I do. I have a son who's 11, who is taller than me, which isn't hard to do because I'm 5'1".
Yeah.
And I have a daughter who is 9.
Awesome, man.
I'm entering into the preteen world.
Yeah. Gonna be a wild ride. So how did let's go back a little bit to the origin story. Like, has God always been around your life, or what was the deal when you're growing up? Did you know God?
He has. He's always been around. I would say that he's been walking with me cheek to cheek, but I have not always acknowledged his presence. So, what does that mean? My father became a minister when I was 5. So my parents are from Virginia. They moved from Virginia to Ohio after my dad graduated college. And he was in the corporate space. And around the age of 5, he felt called to ministry. And so the church started in the family room. Wow. And then grew, and we moved to the living room. I know, it was a big deal. My bedroom was the coat closet. I remember it very fondly. Wow. So it was true grassroots ministry. And my parents are both African American from the South. I live in a predominantly white community. And so that then and even now, I would say in 2023 across America is pretty unheard of that you would have a Black minister with a predominantly white congregation. Wow. And he has several congregations. And my father, both of my parents, but him as a minister, he wasn't a hypocrite. So what he preached is what he lived out. So I didn't have the volleying back and forth of, well, dad and mom are doing one thing out in public and something else in private. I had a true representation of Christ, what that looks like in the home, what that looks like in a marriage. Doesn't mean they are perfect. Sure. They are human beings. But that's the type of home I grew up in.
That's such a good testimony, man. Like, just to hear that, because you don't normally hear it. Yeah.
No, you don't. And my dad he's a bishop now, and he pastors. And it's hard. It's hard being a minister. It's hard being a pastor's kid. I mean, it's just difficult to navigate, and there are a lot of challenges there. I always say I gave my parents gray hair.
Yeah.
Because with all this truth, I was a hot mess. I lived life on the fringes, but I had respect for the authority in the home. So I was not the child that was going to create any sort of disruption or bring sin into the house. It really took off when I went to college. But all the while, I was sitting on the front row all those years hearing the gospel. And once that has attached itself to your being, that can't be scraped off. It's just, it gets into the very fiber of who we are. And there's nothing that anyone can do that can take those experiences away, or those deposits in seeds that have been planted over all of the years. And so, I was doing my own thing in college. That was a trip. I was, but I ultimately would only go so far and never went over the cliff, because I knew that there was something bigger for my life. I just didn't know what it was. I was like, God, I feel this fire burning in me, but I don't really know what that is. I feel like I'm called to leave, but I don't really like people, because people be peopling. People are a trip. Like, I don't really have time for this. I'm going to go to law school. And so things just kind of took a winding turn, and now I'm sitting in front of you.
So was there any pressure to become a pastor, to start a church?
No. My parents were very what my father calls, there's the paying attention to the bend of your children. So what we're bent towards. I was someone who was bent towards leading. There was never a pressure to lead, but when I look back over my life, there was reassurance and command of my voice, confidence. When I speak with purpose, My dad heard me cursing once, and he looked at me and said, "You need to figure out a way to present your argument better." And I
I
was just
love
like,
it.
oh. He was like,
That's so good.
which for me, I mean, I think I might have been 20, but for me, I was like, what do you mean I'm not presenting my argument? What do you, but that, so he knew the call in my life, and knew when to push and pull. I have one brother who is a phenomenal singer. And so he was bent towards music, and they let each one of us walk in our individuality in Christ. So yeah, I don't think any of us want to be pastors, or we're all like, we're good.
Yeah. Well, your dad sounds like an amazing man.
He is. He's a phenomenal man. I can testify. I think anyone in leadership, ministry, a true testimony of your life is, what are your children saying? Not even the spouse. Because my mom is ride or die when it comes. I mean, they have been together for over 40 years. She would say the same thing about my father, but the children, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean.
It's the kids. Like, how did you respond when they misstepped? How did you respond when they walked away from the Lord and they were the prodigal? What did that look like in moments of anger and frustration and disobedience? Those are things you don't deal with your spouse per se. And your child is in a very different position in the home. So what do your children say about your testimony of faith? And all five would say that Robin is no joke.
Oh, shout out to Robin. You're the man.
Yeah.
So did you have any moments that were like, like a Saul to Paul moment, or something supernatural, or something? When I say supernatural, I don't mean spectacular, but just a moment where you're like, boom, something happened there, and I really switched on to what God was doing.
For me, it was very gradual, because I knew who God was. I knew Christ, but because I'm so hard-headed, I have to kind of find my way there. And so after college, I did end up recommitting my life to Christ. And that return back to him was a slow turn. It wasn't like oh my gosh, I'm a sinner. I have come to terms with all the things I've done. Give me a microphone. It wasn't that. But I did recommit my life to Christ, and there was a gradual turn as God kind of pulled on my heart like a tractor beam. He was locked in on me. And like I said, walking cheek to cheek with me through kind of all the things. And, but once I decided. So I made that decision, and then it was like, okay, this is the life that I'm going to live. And even then I still didn't really understand what my purpose was. And I think sometimes we get that a little jumbled. You decide to live your life for Christ. And then it's like, oh, now I know what my purpose is. That's a journey too.
Yeah.
And so we do people a disservice when we're like, old things are passed away, Christ is in you. And it's like, okay, yeah, but what am I supposed to be doing? Like, it's like, well, that is a journey.
Yeah. And then the temptation or the tradition is to go down some kind of a, like something within the four walls, a church kind of calling. But if I look at what you're doing now, you're kind of pastoring all these people through Instagram. You're shepherding, you're leading, encouraging, exhorting through Instagram. It's not, maybe it's your pulpit. I don't know if you want to call it your pulpit, but you're doing that, and it's so out of the box. Like, how did you end up starting an Instagram? What was the journey there?
Yeah, that was never in my purview at all. And so I worked in human resources for 2 decades. and was extremely successful. My plan was to retire early because I achieved success very early. So at the age of 30, I was the youngest, one of the youngest African-American executives in the States.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a senior vice president for one of the country's major brands that's been around for over 100 years. And that was totally a God thing, because I would sometimes be in a room and like, why am I in here? Like, do y'all know that I'm not supposed to be in here? But God kicked the hinges off the doors. And when he does that, no one can close it.
So good, man.
And so I was on this career path. I'm divorced. So I was married for 10 years. I was in an abusive marriage. So I had this career that was skyrocketing in magazines, getting awards. And then I had this abusive marriage where I'm like, okay, where are you, God? Because I literally don't see you. And so that's kind of a different story, but I ended up in 2020, when we were all locked in our homes around the world, right? Instead of jet setting around the world, which is what I did, I was in my home and I started having a dissatisfaction for the first time in my career for what I was doing. It didn't really make sense anymore. So in my stillness, God then started creating a desire for something different and more. And I didn't really know what that was. And I didn't know how I was going to get it. I couldn't put words to it. But, I'm sitting in this same seat, every day. And I'm like, I just really don't want to do this. And I was very close to being, I had already been named the successor. So in the United States, a senior vice president, when you become an SVP, you are then groomed to take over the really big job at a public company. And I had already been named the successor. My boss then had spent 3 years preparing me for her job. She was about to transition out in January of 2021. In September of that year, I had what's called a TIA, which is basically your body's red flag that you're about to have a stroke. Yeah, I was 36, and it was because of all the pressure and stress of the job and everything the world was going through, and the business I was working for was still kind of humming along. And so that dissatisfaction then turned into panic, because I'm like, I'm a single parent of 2 children. I do not want to spend the rest of my life in boardrooms. Like, this ain't it. And so I went out to Utah because they put me off work, and God kind of revealed to me what he couldn't have shown me a year before, which was me being called to lead others and helping them achieve their well done, which is based off of what his purpose is for their life. I don't define that. So I can't define what your well done is, right? But it's to me, it's a really big deal to help you achieve that. Men, women, etc. And I'm like, and that's where Jesus led Bible Fed came from. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't really know what all of this means, and I'm still in this really big corporate job. Within 2 months, I had resigned. Had no idea that I would be resigning. And it was just a series of events. And God, again, opened doors. And I'm like, am I really at 36 going to be able to essentially retire from the are you kidding me right now? I was then 37 because my birthday's in September. And so at 37, I was able to walk away and do what I'm doing now, which has evolved over the last kind of couple of years. But you're
that's
just
amazing.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah. I'm like, that's amazing. So you've retired, and maybe, so you mean like financially, like you're set, and so you're,
for the most part, For the most part, I'm financially in a place where I'm able to do a lot of the things that people can't do. And I could maybe go back at some point, but I'm set in the sense of I'm not rushing to do anything. I'm very much so able to walk in my purpose. I'm very much so able to go to speaking engagements and to pour into other people and not, charge crazy amounts of, because I've had this blessing. What I tell people is God used that 20 years to prepare me for what he needed me to do and wants me to do. And as a single parent, finances is a really big deal. And that he was like, no, you're on my payroll now.
So good, man.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I had no idea you're such a super high achiever, A-type personality. Go get it. Because you're so vulnerable and transparent and real and raw and humble on your feed. Like, I don't know if many people would guess that. Like even now, like it's this contradiction because normally people are like, wow, like don't see any weakness. So maybe you can touch on that a little bit. Yeah. Like vulnerability, transparency. What is that to Bethny?
To me, it's honesty. There is not a single leader, myself included, who has not stumbled or fallen. And there's this saying that they use in the business world and even online and probably in your spaces too, where you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, right? We've heard that. I'm usually not the smartest person in the room. So there's that piece. And I tell people, if you ever get to a point where you're like, I am the smartest person in the room, you are allowing your ego to get in the way and you're not listening. Because if you're listening, you're learning.
So good.
And so to answer your question, I'm being honest about what the journey actually looks like. Because when I got to the peak of my mountain, and I've been at the peak of several mountains, all I saw were more peaks and bigger mountains. That's it. So when I got my awards, when I became an SVP, when I was the Ohio's, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, there was another big mountain, which meant there was another valley. There were more trenches. It's kind of daunting. Nobody says that. Everyone's like, get up at 5, grind, work hard, network, do all the things, which is fine. I think there's a season for that. But it's also back-breaking work. And if you don't do it correctly, you will lose your soul. And people, gain the whole world and lose your soul, right? We see that posted all the time. That's not after death. That's why you're alive. You're losing your soul while you're still breathing.
Yeah.
It's happening while you're still breathing.
And you would have seen a lot of this with other corporates and people around you. You would have seen a lot of this, like people that maybe career-wise are like, but they're broken.
Yes, because of the nature of my job, which was, human resources is a global. I had over 100 people on my team across the world. And a part of my job was to be a sounding board. And the things that I would hear and the brokenness that I would hear behind closed doors, you're talking people who are worth $20, $50 million. I'm in rooms with billionaires, broken. Can't really see their way clear. Unsure of what the next step is, but there is, and in part justified, rightfully so, there is this pressure to show up and have an answer. Right? So then you create this illusion of perfection. You're surrounded by people who are just agreeable because they have their own stuff they're going through and they also want to get paid. So it's this unending cycle. And, I just had a unique position at tables, which I think is a God thing also, because I'm not enamored with stuff. I even now, like in the space, he's calling me to be transparent and vulnerable with my story. And I'm like, why not? Like, what? why wouldn't I?
Mm.
Like he didn't pull me out of a hole.
Yeah. And so many people are scared to just share their vulnerability, share their story, be transparent. What would you say to them? You got any coaching for them?
If they say to share their story?
They're too scared. They're worried about people's opinion, or they're worried about being looked down upon, or
This is actually my post for today, which has to do with not allowing other people to determine your worth. So what you're doing when you do that is you are allowing other people to assess value on something that's already been decided. It's already been decided. God and I have already had a conversation about what I'm worth. He gave his son for me. Now, does that mean I'm perfect? Absolutely not. Very imperfect. Does that mean I don't need mentors, a pastor? I need all of those things. But what can't happen is I am muzzled because of someone else's view on if my story has value or not. I'm sorry. Who said that you get to decide? Like that person doesn't get to decide unless you empower them to do so. So I say, take it back. So respectfully. Yeah. I didn't ask you. Respectfully.
Yeah, that's so good. When I go through your feed and when I've seen different things you've talked about, like you talk about failure, right? Like I feel like some of us are so scared of failure that we almost want to act like it hasn't happened, or we don't want to talk about it. And so we know it's there, but we don't talk about it, and it can shut people down. Like, what are your thoughts on failure? Is there such a thing as failure?
So failure is real, but failure is not a person. So what happens is people attach that word to themselves and they say, I am a failure. You are not a failure. You failed. And in failing, you learn something. So the reason I have achieved everything that I have achieved is for two reasons. One, the lessons I learned from personal failure. And two, the lessons I learned from watching other people fail.
So good.
That's the math. That's it. And so I think people should fail forward fearlessly. Write that down.
Yeah,
fail forward fearlessly. He's like, I am going to write it down. That just fell out.
In the comments.
Yeah, that's because there really are a lot of lessons that we learn. We don't learn anything if we don't try. And I told my son, who's 11, so he's going through whatever 11-year-old boys go through. And I told him, because, I don't know.
I get it.
I'm just trying to mother. And then when I can, I, call my dad and brothers. I'm like, hey, need you to tag in. But I told him, I said, son, you cannot fear failure, because then trying becomes even more difficult. You won't even try because you're like, the fear of failure will keep you from trying. And he's like, okay, I'll try. I'm like, that's it. I just want you to try. So people will be crippled in their trying because of the fear of failure. And I want to break that. And I want people to know that if they're surrounded by others who chastise them for missteps, for not understanding, for lack of clarity, then those aren't your people.
So good.
Right? Because proximity does not equate to relationship. Right? So just because, just because someone is sitting close to you, elbow to elbow, does not mean that there is a deep friendship or that they have your best interest at heart. That math doesn't always math. So if someone is not regularly edifying you and supporting you in your moments of failure and weakness and misunderstanding and missteps, again, I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I'm not saying that there aren't times where you have to be called up and out. I mean, the Bible tells us this. The Bible tells us this. However, like, proximity doesn't mean that somebody has your best interest at heart.
Yeah. And that could be marriage sometimes. You learn it after years.
It absolutely can. I mean, you can be, I have friends who have gone through seasons of very trying times in their marriage because there was that tension there of the other person wasn't necessarily edifying. And it took faith to walk through that, and counseling and, just real communication and conversation to kind of understand what the other person needed and why they weren't getting it.
Yeah. There's so much synergy here. There's so many subjects I want to hit now. All these pathways are opening.
You're like, oh my God.
Yeah, I'm like, we could go here.
Yeah, go anywhere.
When you say the chastising thing, like, that's such a big deal. Like, when we're little kids and we're learning how to walk and talk and eat, and all we get is encouragement, at least in a healthy home. You get a lot of that. And that's the only reason we learn how to do this stuff, But if we got shut down at that time, I don't know, half of us wouldn't know how to eat properly, and probably not be toilet trained, and it would be chaos.
Yeah.
So another thing you talk about is learning, right? Maybe the power of learning, or the need for learning, or the art of learning. What is learning to you? Do you want to expand on learning and then what that means?
I mean, it's a little bit of what I said earlier. It's listening. So I am really big on surrounding myself with people who don't think like me. Now, there's a caveat because, this is really trendy. But when I say don't think like me, that does not negate the fact that they should be kind. Right. Yeah. So, right. Like, you cannot think like me, but you should be a kind person and operate in love. So those are, you're not getting in if you can't do that right. Like, so sure. I surround myself with people who are different from me culturally, socioeconomically, even the theology may be different in terms of just how they read scripture and how they look at things. And for me, it allows me to have this very deep level of empathy when I am talking and writing. It reminds me of what heaven's going to look like. Right? So good. And it also keeps me tender to the Holy Spirit, just to the mind of God in the moment. And just people who are just different than me. And somebody might be like, okay, that is way too deep. Try it. Try it.
And that's so interesting that you say listening, because that's usually not what we like to do. We hear, but we don't necessarily want to listen. And yeah, I get it. And I felt that too a lot of times. Like, there's so much you end up learning when you really listen. And I love what you're saying, even the balance. I guess now I can understand why you are who you are, because you make room for this, all the unique expressions, and I guess that keeps you in a good place.
I mean, people are afraid to, I think I've said this before publicly, but people are afraid to let silence do its work. Right? Silence is not cold and dull. There are things that happen in the lull of silence, right? And so if you just let silence be still and don't always fill the gap, a lot of times the conversation will come to you, wisdom will come to you, people will feel seen. People feel seen in silence. They don't always feel seen in words. And people know what I'm talking about. Like, you have sat with friends and just kind of plopped down on the couch. I'm drinking my coffee, and you're in that moment and you just let the silence be there, and then something bubbles up. Because you didn't fill the space with noise.
Yeah. I've always felt like men do that well. I don't know if it's because they do it on purpose or because they don't know how to articulate their words properly. But two guys can just sit together and not say anything for 20 minutes and be like, that was great bonding, man.
Yes.
But with women, it's a bit more challenging, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think women, we have the gift of conversation, and that's how we connect. And that's our heart connection there. Men, they are good with silence, and then they don't say anything. It's like, oh my God, that was such a good time. Well, your dude over here is broken. Right? Like, I get that you guys gamed for 2 hours, but he actually needed you to turn to him and go, "You all right, man?" Or whatever guys say to each other. I don't know it. I don't know how you guys talk to each other, but like, you doing all right, man? And then he's like, yeah. And you're like, no, seriously. Because I know this is how I would be doing.
Yeah.
I mean,
so good. Yeah, I guess both sides finding the equilibrium,
Yeah.
So let's go into this. And I think you do this really well. And I felt this from your social media, like it's the power of rest. I would call it that, the power of rest. Like it feels like you have learnt. You're like this. So that's why I didn't think you're a type A personality. Like you're a type A personality monk or something. Like, I don't know how they even go together, but there's this rest. Like you're in rest, you're trusting and just doing what you need to in total rest. Can you talk about that? Resting, the power, the need for rest?
Yes, I'm a very big proponent of rest. It took me a long time to get to this place. So it's not always this way, hence the almost having a stroke at 36. But when I left my job, God immediately said, don't do anything. And I was like, what? That didn't make any sense. Are you kidding me? And it was very, very hard for me. It was, I went through a detox. I didn't know how to sit still. I did not realize that my value had been connected to this like paycheck that I was getting and like being in the midst of like all the things. I preached once. I told this story about how soon after I left, I went to this bank to open an account. And the woman asked me, she was like, what do you do for a living? And instead of saying, I'm a writer speaker, which would have been a true story. I actually put a book out in 2020, a small poetry book. Would have been a true story. I had my Instagram account. I was speaking on that. True story. I reverted back to the door God had closed. Because that title meant something to her, and I didn't realize how attached I was to that life and how much value and esteem I got from that title given to me by man versus what God was calling me. Right? So when I was called into the season of rest, I learned a lot about myself, but also the need for it and the comfort I can find there and actually building that into my life.
So pre-rest, what was your schedule like? Like what time did you wake up? What are you doing?
Oh God.
What was your week like?
Oh my. I was up at 4:30. Yeah. So 4:30 a.m. I was up. It was gym and get the kids ready for school. I was not able to take them to school because I had to be at the office early. So I had a nanny that would come. I would go to the office. My first meeting would start at 7 a.m. and that would go all day. My day usually didn't end till 5:30 or 6. This is if I was not traveling. I would get home, spend an hour with my kids because they would go to bed at 8, get, dinner, baths, what little homework they had left that I could help them with, I would. They would go to bed. I would go back to work. Because I had a global team. So I had team in Europe. I had teams in China. I had people all over that I was supporting, and I would probably wind down about 11:30-ish. I was also single. So, I'm at the house by myself. So I just threw myself into work, and that cycle went on for years. And even when I was married, I had a pretty hectic travel schedule. I mean, I had a pretty hectic travel schedule. I mean, I would do day trips, leave at 4 a.m, land at 5.
Wow.
Just fly from the East Coast to West Coast, do the meeting, come back, land at 5, get home. But you have all the time change stuff. So it was I didn't understand the gift of rest and what that looked like until I was called into it. And then I realized I had always been called into it. Like this is not something that was a gift in terms of, I had done all of these works and now I was deserving of it. I had always been deserving of it. Right?
Wow. So do you think somewhere you were chasing something? You were...
Oh yeah. I'll be pretty honest about the fact that I struggled with pride, the pride that came with the job. And I can definitely follow that up with and say, to make myself feel better, well, I wasn't as bad as some other people. But it was still this, this prestige. And, I was flying private. There's this thing that happens. And it was the money, but then there's the power. And unbeknownst to me, there was this wrestling going on within my spirit. And I truly say unbeknownst to me, because on the surface, I'm like, I love Jesus. I'm tithing, I'm doing this good work in this company that is full of sin. And, I'm the light, even though I can't really talk about God because that's illegal. So, I'm doing all of this stuff, but there was a war within me attempting to make me always feel like I was better. Right. And that's that subtle attack of like, well, you are still kind of better.
Yeah. I think that's mammon, like a lot of people just say mammon's just money, but that's everything that comes with it. And there's a level of glory, a level of power, freedom, so mammon, it's interesting that Jesus is like, hey, there's two gods here, one real God and one little g, and this little g is going to try and be your God, and
yes. And I had such a visceral reaction to how everyone else was behaving, and I was like, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to be like that. But then there were certain things that I expected, and I look back now and I'm going, oh my gosh, like really? Like I even allowed someone to do that. But it's because that prick in my heart, but God knew. So when he called me to rest, it wasn't just a sleeping rest. It was rest in me so I can purify you before you move into what I've called you to do. Because like I said, when I speak, I pour out. And it doesn't mean like on a stage. When I'm meeting with people individually, one-on-one, I consider your podcast, this is me pouring out. I'm able to do that in a transparent and vulnerable way because God worked out all that pride, lack of humility. Like, this is not what we're doing here. Not what we're doing. And it's one of the reasons why my Instagram is the way it is. You would have no idea that I've done the things that I've done, because to me, it's not important. Yeah. Like it is, but not really. What is important are the words healing, and do they make you ask the question of what's her story and who is walking with her? Who is this Jesus? Who's this Jesus she talking about? I need to know.
So good. So okay, you're this hectic chick, right? And now you're like in rest. So you're not doing as much. What was that like for you? Like, what were the first few weeks and months like?
Oh, it was torment because I was, I don't know what to do. I should be doing something. And then I eased into it and enjoyed taking my kids to school. I'd never done that before. So really kind of stepped into those things. Enjoyed my friendships and all of that. And then I get a phone call from an agent, a book agent, Trinity, and a couple of others. Like out of nowhere, I get these direct messages from book agents and they're like, we would like to sign you. Like,
wow.
I'm like, sign me? Like, what in the world is okay? Well, I can write a book. And so I'm meeting with some people, and then Trinity with the bindery comes along and she and I connect. And so I signed without a proposal. It was totally God. Signed with an agency for, a book. So all of this is happening as God is restoring and healing and refining and preparing me for what he is wanting me to do. Not only in the present, but in the future. Because as much as I like to say that I can see around corners, I can't, right? But he's the God who stands in yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Yeah, so good. So
yeah, that's what it was like.
Yeah, so let's start throwing some coaching in here, right? So there's somebody listening who might be like, man, God's calling me into rest, but I absolutely don't want to do it. Or I've been thrust into this rest. I love being busy. Can you speak to them a little bit? What, got any tips, any advice for them?
One, I would say, ask yourself, why do you think you know better than God?
Good question.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so there's that. And so you need to, there's that repositioning of pride because you've allowed your heart posture to elevate above God's instruction. And it happens. I'm not, I literally just spent the last few minutes saying, this is what I did.
Yeah.
So that's the first question, to answer in private. You don't have to do it publicly. And then create a rhythm of rest, right? Because a lot of times people think rest looks like sleeping and sitting on the couch, but really it can be about deepening the relationships that God has brought into your life. It can be allowing yourself to be in the wind. So releasing the schedule for those who can. So instead of saying, I absolutely have to do this at 8:00 every day, maybe not. And maybe when you release that, you can look up from what you're doing, observe what's happening around you, and be a blessing to someone's life, or just take the opportunity to breathe. Literally breathe. Like just be still and know that I am God. It could look like that, right? The releasing of the schedule, the deepening of relationship. A lot of if I look at the relationships that are very close to me right now, a lot of those relationships were deepened during this period. And they are people who will hold me accountable. If I step out of pocket, like out of line, whether it's online or offline, like these are people who I respect because we are now doing life together, and they don't all live. Most of the people close to me do not live in Ohio. Like they are all over the world, different time zones. But if they called me and said, something's off here and we need to get on the phone, I would pick up the call because that period of time that we spent together in communion, respect was garnered on both ends. So I know that they have my back. Does that mean so seasons of rest, there's things that happen there.
It's so good. And I do think, like, we talk about the pandemic. We are in a pandemic of busyness. Everyone's too busy to really connect, and we almost devalue connection now. We've reduced connection to a like and a message or a comment every now and then on social media, and most people don't even know how to connect, to sit in a room and actually be with someone.
Yeah,
so
they
I
don't.
love what you're saying there. So hopefully that's for you there, you busy person. She just spoke to you. Listen to her.
I did.
She's been
I
through
did.
it.
It is for you.
Yeah.
It is for you.
The other thing that hit me on your Insta, you wrote something around living without compromise.
Yes,
Living without
compromise. Compromise is not free.
Yeah, and when I see your feed, like, it's not like you're this open evangelist that's running around beating people on the head, telling them how to be, but you're not compromising. So how does somebody live without compromise, without having to be someone that Bible bashes everyone who comes across their path?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. One, you have to define who you are before people tell you. And that's in combination with God. So this is not happening outside of, your walk with Christ, but knowing who you are beforehand. Because you'll meet people along the way who will tell you to adjust and tweak and change and fit in, and respectfully, I've already had that conversation.
Yeah.
So, with all due respect. But when you know that, and when you understand your personal truth and understand the things you aren't going to waver on, when it comes to compromising and when it comes to adjusting and things like that, it's very hard to be influenced, because compromise is directly connected to the ability to be influenced on certain things. Right? And so a lot of times what we see are people will compromise the word of God for their selfish gain. So you have to decide early on who is Christ in you, and that you are not going to do that. Because that compromise is not free. It may feel like it because it's just a post, it's just a conference, it's just a conversation, but that is not free. That comes at a cost. And are you willing to pay the cost, whatever that cost is? And I'm not being doom and gloom. Like, literally every decision we make, there is a ripple effect to that decision. It doesn't have to be negative. It can be positive. It doesn't have to be negative. But I think people are a little willy-nilly with what they're okay with making adjustments. And then all of a sudden, you fast forward 3 years later and you look in the mirror and you don't know who you're looking at. That doesn't happen overnight. That's not like on a Tuesday to a Thursday. That's from 1999 to 2013. And then you go, how did I get here? How did I get here? What decision did I make? Well, it wasn't one decision. It was several decisions, because you didn't decide. You didn't set the bar. You let somebody else set the bar for you. Somebody who doesn't really know you, somebody who maybe wasn't fully invested in you mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And if people aren't invested in all three of those, they should not be a mentor. Spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. If those people are not invested in you in all three buckets, they should not have the title of mentorship in your life. I said what I said. Said what I said. Right?
And I agree.
That stuff matters. That stuff matters. Because the people who you allow to make deposits in your life will influence how you adjust and pivot. So if you're just letting anybody tell you what to do and how to do it and when to do it, you will fast forward and you will be like me, where there was a time when I looked in the mirror and I'm like, oh, what am I looking at? How did I get, what is happening right now? And it doesn't mean that you lack faith. It doesn't mean you are an unbeliever, by the way. Like, this is not a salvation, like, oh my gosh, I've lost my salvation because I'm looking in the mirror and I don't know who I am. No, that's not what any of this means. It means you're a human and you messed up. And guess what? We get to start over again.
And that's so interesting, because a lot of times if somebody hears compromise, they automatically will think some crazy obvious sin or something, that's like really bad. But you could just be compromising on who God says you are, who you really are. And that small little detour then ends up in this whole other island.
Yeah, I was working for a company, and I was sitting with my boss and the CEO. And he looked at me and he goes, I want you to be the head of marketing. I know what my skills are. Now, the head of marketing, a CMO, is a much bigger job than a head of HR job, especially in monetary value. So he was also talking about a substantial amount of money. I said no. The reason I said no was not because I was scared. It's because I knew my capabilities. When you know that you know that you know that you know, you're not going to waver. So I was not going to compromise in the short term, even though I knew I know I'm good, but I'm not that good. To completely jump a field, I would make a lot of money in 2 years, but this wouldn't pan out very well for the organization. So to your point, like, it's not always sin compromises. Sometimes it's very practical. It's around knowing what your skills are, knowing what your strengths are. And then you're able to surround yourself with the right type of people to say, like, no, you shouldn't take that job. I mean, you're good at marketing, but you're not a marketer. You're not a CMO.
Yeah. I've watched many people detour like that,
Yes.
And because they don't have someone, distracted. They don't have someone in their life that they can talk to about this stuff. I love it. Love what you're saying.
I called one of my friends I told him no, but I called one of my friends and she was like, oh, absolutely not. She's like, you could do a slightly above average job. She was like, but you would literally run yourself into the ground trying to do it. I was like, yeah, that's what I thought. But she wasn't scared of me. She's just like, I love you and know you. Like, I don't care what the dollar signs are. No.
So good. So those of you that may not be sure if you're compromising, that little segment was for you. Have a friend who's not scared to tell you that you are going somewhere you shouldn't be going. And set a standard for yourself. Make the decision. Set a standard for yourself and make the decision that this is your path.
And even if it's something simple like, it's not simple, but if you find yourself always adjusting to the people around you and not standing up for yourself or speaking up for yourself, that is wearing down on your spirit. Because and people don't realize they're doing this to you, but you are allowing other people to steal your voice. You are making that compromise. And the reason it's not free is because later on in the day and over time, you feel devalued. You don't feel like anyone's listening to you. You don't feel like anybody loves you. But it started off by, well, I'm just going to adjust and please, and I'll do this for them this one time, and I don't really want to, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't, do things that we don't want to do. That's not what I'm saying. But if you have a pattern of allowing other people to steal your voice, even when they don't realize they're doing it, unacceptable behavior. Unacceptable behavior.
Man, so good.
Respectfully.
I like that you throw that in there. Hashtag respectfully.
Respectfully.
And it does become a pattern, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and then now this is the story of your life. Yeah, totally true. So as people are journeying through different situations, like we've just touched on failure, on learning, on rest, on compromise, and so people going through different processes, because everyone listening right now is in some kind of process, right?
Yes.
What would you say in terms of trusting the process? That's another thing you like to talk about, trust the process. Why don't we go into that a little bit?
Well, I like to say that preparation isn't fair.
Isn't fair?
It's not fair.
Right?
So what we do is when we are in a season where capacity is being created, we don't expect to necessarily feel uncomfortable or all those kind of like squishy emotions, fear, doubt. And so we will stop, we will detour, we will say, this is not the path for me. Why is it easier for them and not for me? The season of preparation isn't fair. It's not supposed to be. You are being stretched and pulled solely to create capacity for what's supposed to happen tomorrow. Because if you were ready, you would already be there. And you're not. You're not ready. And that is okay. One of the things I appreciate about the corporate world is we will tell people that they are not ready or not capable to their face. And we are not going to take their money or their time. It's different from the online world, where we will take your money and your time, knowing that you are not capable.
Dude, that is so good.
Right?
People do that in the Christian space, in the kingdom space.
Yes, they
do. Yeah.
Yes, they do. Knowing that there's nothing wrong with not being capable. There are things that I cannot do. Do not ask me to manage a multi-million-dollar P&L. I am not a finance person. That is not my gifting. Hallelujah. But I know people who are. Like, I don't that's not. I know that there are times when I need to walk away because I can have moments where I lack a lot of patience. So I say this because you don't always have to have all the capability. But we do people a disservice in ministry and in leadership when we take their time, because somebody might be like, well, I don't take any money. We take their time. We allow them to posture, and we take their money, because time is currency, and we make them believe something that is not real. Unacceptable. And in the corporate world, people like me would sit down with Joe Smo and say, hey, you don't have the capability to do this job right now. This is what you need to add to your repertoire in order to get there. So we don't leave them hanging either. We just say, like, these are the things you need. You need to go get this certification. Maybe you should take this course. Maybe you should do X, Y, and Z. If this is a goal of yours, see you in a year, because it's going to take you a year to do that. But because we lack patience and we live in a microwave, push button, give it to me right now society, people are cowards when it comes to telling people who they are in the present. And they won't tell them who they can be in the future because they themselves don't have the capability to assess.
That's so good, man. Boom. Wow.
See?
Yeah. And we don't do that, especially around believers. We don't do that. We're so scared to say, you're not quite there yet. You can be there. Here is the bridge. Here is the pathway. But we just kind of act like, oh, well, I guess you're already there, or, you know.
Yeah, you're blessed. You're anointed. After I had rededicated my life to Christ, I was driving and God showed me this vision. And it was, what it looked like was me. Actually, I don't think I was a believer yet. It looked like I was on a stage and there were a sea of people and there was a microphone. I freaked out. I was like, what is this? And fast forward 2 years ago. So I had forgotten about that vision. I didn't tell anybody about it. Nor did I know what my giftings were at the time either. Fast forward 2 years ago, it came back, but with more clarity. And which can tell you like your ego, how your ego can show up in things, because I thought people were looking at me on the stage. But what they were doing, the waves were people with their hands raised to heaven. And I was standing with my hands raised to heaven with a microphone, because I wasn't speaking yet, with a microphone that didn't have anything attached. Right? So it looked totally different because I had the capacity to handle in this season what God had already shown me 15 years ago.
Wow.
And then I took that to someone to help me kind of interpret and blah, blah, blah. But my point is, we have to be surrounded by people who can help us properly assess the season that we are in and say, true, but not ready yet.
So good. And maybe now we can just wrap this whole convo up with this preparation thing. Like, we've been going over an hour and nearly hour and 10 minutes, by the way. This has been so much fun. You're amazing. Thank you for being you. So this preparation thing, right? Like, if we go through the Bible, we see all these guys who God promises something to them, and then there's just preparation. The season of contradiction, it looks totally different to what you're saying. And I have noticed a lot of people skip their preparation or walk alongside it, but they kind of don't jump in the river. And then 10 years go by and they wonder, where is my prize? Where is the reward of my process? Yeah. But they never really allowed the process to happen. Can you touch on that a little bit? The preparation and why people run from it?
Because it requires patience and trust in God. I mean, I think Moses is beautiful with this story of, if you really look at his story, the unfolding that happens in his life and how those chapters unfold and how God showed him what he was supposed to do and the timing. And even then he was resistant. I mean, in front of the burning bush, God literally showed a version of himself. This bush is on fire. He was talking to a bush and still questioned whether or not he was supposed to go and set the Lord's people free, because he failed to realize that his life up until that moment had been preparing him for the next moment. And then that next moment would prepare him for when he was standing in front of the sea, right? Because if he hadn't had all of that, when he was standing in front of that large body of water, the Moses in front of the burning bush, if he had jumped to the sea, he would have had the same reaction that he had. Be like, where's Aaron? Because you somebody else. You need somebody else. But people resist that because there is tension there. There's a trusting that has to happen. And we don't have any patience. And we definitely don't have patience for God.
Yeah.
Yeah, God is on our time. And if he does not move when I want him to, then I'm just going to go ahead and insert myself. And I'm going to make things happen. And like he's going to move any faster because you've now inserted yourself into the story in the way that you think it should be inserted. Because again, I wasn't even thinking about, I'm a believer, but I was like, I'm going to retire. Me and my kids are going to move to Charleston and I'll never be married again. Like, I'm like, this is my life. Like, this is what I'm doing. Like, blah, blah, blah. Great. Like, and God's like, well, actually.
Yeah. There was a time where after we got married, we were doing so well financially, and then we go through this year of like drought with the money. And I don't even know how we survived that year, but in that year, man, I reached for a lot of things, where I'm just like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. And the preparation, I was running from it and I delayed it. Thank God eventually I was just like, okay, actually I'm done. Like, what are you doing? And it brought me to where I am now. But I can totally see that I could have easily skipped or prolonged that process and missed out,
Yeah, the pruning that God does is the tearing away of dead things. But we are trying to hold to what is dead. Right? And so there's something, and we hold to things that are dead because one, we don't realize they're dead, or because it's what's familiar. So we revert to what is familiar. That is human nature. My degrees are in criminology and sociology. So human behavior. We revert to what is familiar. In crisis. And God is like, or you can trust me. We're like, or you can move faster. You can just make this easier and move faster.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get the glory in the moving faster. And that's not how that math works. Because I am here for his glory, not for my own. That'll preach.
So good. And Ephesians 3:20 talks about this blessing that's beyond what you can see, think, or imagine. And so the preparation is preparing you for something you don't understand at all, It's so much better than we think.
Yeah, and that is the journey, not the finish line. Not the finish. It's the journey is that preparing and refining period. That's it.
So good. Man, this was so good. What a conversation. I loved it. Do you have
glad to be here.
Yeah. Do you have a wisdom bomb, something you want to drop at the end just to finish off? Anything you want to say to people?
I have nothing.
You've said enough. She's bombed enough.
I don't have anything else. I mean, I enjoyed the conversation and I hope that it truly blesses people, and that you know that even if you fall, fail, misstep, that it's okay. It's okay. And you can get up again and start over again and try again. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Awesome. How do people reach you, and who should reach out?
Anybody can reach out. Absolutely. Anybody can reach out. My Instagram, which is my name, Bethny Ricks. I don't have an A in my name.
Why is that, by the way? I was going to ask that question.
Because my parents, I don't know. They just said, oh, we're going to make it a little unique and we're going to say Bethny. I'm like, okay. So yeah, my Instagram, Bethny or Jesus Led Bible Fed, and then my website. So, you can see all the newsletter, which is the Pour It Out newsletter. If you want any kind of one-on-one coaching or anything like that, it's all there on my website. And if you want me to speak, invite me to speak at a conference or anything like that, you can get me there.
So good. I have all the links in the caption. I have it all in the comments as well, so you can find it there. Boom. Maybe one day we will do something, Bethny. We'll do something and just
if I say yes once, I usually say yes again, because I don't say yes often because I'm a repeat yes. So that's my rule. If I say yes once, that means you are now a repeat yes.
Very cool. Maybe we do something in Dallas, like an event. Bring people, light them on fire. That would be amazing.
I love Dallas.
Awesome. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to share this with people that will benefit. Lots of pearls, lots of nuggets, lots of bombs. But that's us. Bethny, thank you so much. I honor your journey. I honor your walk. I honor your humility. When you said you struggled with pride, I don't think many people would think that at all now. I honor this fusion of a type A meets a monk. You're living this thing out, like this tension in the kingdom. I honor it all, and super thankful that you came and hung out with us today. So thank you so much.
Anytime at all. Thank you for having me.
Cool. So you stay with me for a minute, but everyone else, we're going to say goodbye, and I'll see you on the next one, guys.